How Amazon makes money. While you sleep, Amazon looks like a store. That is the first thing you need to forget. Because if Amazon were simply an online retailer, its business would be much easier to understand. It would buy products, sell them for more, pay its employees and delivery companies, and keep whatever was left. But that is not really what Amazon has become. In 2025, Amazon generated about $716.9 billion in total sales. Yet the most interesting part of that number isn't the size. It's where the money came from. Amazon reported about $269.3 billion from online stores, but also $172.2 billion from third-party seller services, $68.6 billion from advertising, $49.6 billion from subscriptions, and $128.7 billion from AWS. In other words, Amazon can make money from a product without necessarily being the company that made it. It can make money from the seller trying to sell it. It can make money from the advertisement that helped the customer discover it. It can make money from the subscription that brought the customer back. And somewhere completely outside the shopping experience, another company might be paying Amazon to run its servers. That is the real story. Amazon didn't simply build the world's biggest online store. It built a system in which other businesses pay to participate in Amazon's system. And once you understand that, the phrase, "while you sleep," starts to make a lot more sense. Because Amazon doesn't need you to be staring at your screen every second. The machine keeps running. A seller can receive an order at 2 a.m. A company can have its software running on AWS at 3 a.m. An advertisement can receive clicks overnight. A Prime membership can continue through its subscription period. The customer sleeps. The infrastructure doesn't. And the first clue to understanding this machine goes all the way back to Amazon's earliest days. In 1994, Jeff Bezos started Amazon as an online bookstore. The obvious business opportunity was simple: buy books, sell books, make a margin. But Bezos recognized something more valuable than the books themselves. The internet could remove one of the biggest limitations of a physical store: shelf space. A normal bookstore could only carry so many titles. An online store could theoretically offer millions. That created the foundation for Amazon's first major advantage: selection. But there was a problem. If Amazon wanted to offer everything, it couldn't realistically buy and store everything itself. So Amazon opened the doors to third-party sellers. And that decision quietly changed the economics of the company. Imagine you manufacture phone cases. You could build your own website. Then you would have to figure out how to attract customers. You would need payment processing. You would need customer service. You would need fulfillment. You would need to convince people that your website is trustworthy. Or you could go where the customers already are: Amazon. Now Amazon doesn't have to manufacture your phone case. It doesn't necessarily need to own the inventory. It provides the marketplace, and in return, Amazon earns fees from the services surrounding the transaction. Amazon's own financial statements classify third-party seller services as revenue from commissions and related fulfillment and shipping fees. In 2025, that category generated $172.2 billion. And here's the important distinction. That $172.2 billion is not the value of every product sold by those sellers. It's Amazon's reported revenue from providing those services. That difference matters, because this is where Amazon's model becomes more interesting than traditional retail. Amazon can facilitate a huge amount of commerce without recording the entire merchandise value as its own retail revenue. The seller owns the product. The seller takes much of the inventory risk. The seller deals with the economics of producing the item. Amazon provides access to customers and a growing collection of services around the transaction. And Amazon gets paid for being the platform. But now, Amazon had a new problem. If sellers were going to depend on Amazon, customers had to keep coming back. And that is where Prime enters the story. Prime wasn't simply a shipping program. It changed the psychology of shopping. Before Prime, a customer might ask, Is this product worth paying extra shipping for? After Prime, the question becomes, I already have Prime. Why wouldn't I buy it here? That is a subtle difference. But subtle differences can become enormous when repeated across hundreds of millions of customers. Prime turns individual purchases into a relationship, and Amazon doesn't only collect Prime membership fees. The subscription can encourage more shopping activity across the marketplace. Amazon reported $49.6 billion in subscription services revenue in 2025, a category that includes Prime membership fees as well as other digital subscriptions. So, Prime isn't simply a product Amazon sold. It's part of the mechanism that keeps customers inside the Amazon ecosystem. And now we reach the part of Amazon's business that many people underestimate: advertising. Imagine you're selling headphones. You have a great product. You have good reviews. Your price is competitive. But there is one problem. There are hundreds of other headphone products sitting next to yours. How do you get noticed? You pay Amazon. Amazon can place sponsored products in front of shoppers who are already searching for something similar. This is extremely valuable advertising real estate, because the customer isn't randomly browsing the internet. The customer is already looking for something to buy. That changes everything. A person watching a random video may not want headphones, but a person searching Amazon for wireless headphones under $100 is already displaying commercial intent. That intent is valuable, and Amazon has turned that intent into a business. In 2025, Amazon reported $68.6 billion in advertising services revenue, up from $56.2 billion in 2024. And according to Amazon's filing, its advertising services include sponsored ads, display advertising, and video advertising. Advertising revenue is recognized as ads are delivered, including through clicks or impressions. So think about what just happened. A seller joins Amazon. The seller wants customers. Amazon already has customers. The seller pays Amazon for access to those customers. Amazon earns money. But Amazon isn't finished, because the seller might also ask, can Amazon store my products and deliver them for me? Now another business opportunity appears: fulfillment. Instead of a seller maintaining its own warehouse network, Amazon can store inventory, pick orders, pack them, and help get them to the customer through its fulfillment system. That creates another layer of revenue. And more importantly, it makes Amazon more difficult to replace. Because once a seller depends on Amazon for customers, advertising, fulfillment, payments, and logistics, leaving the platform becomes much more complicated. This is where Amazon's business model starts behaving like a flywheel. More sellers create more selection. More selection attracts more customers. More customers make Amazon more valuable to sellers. More sellers create more transactions. More transactions create more opportunities for advertising and fulfillment. And the cycle reinforces itself. But there's a weakness hiding inside this success. The more Amazon promises convenience, the more expensive that convenience becomes. Fast delivery sounds simple when you're sitting on your couch. It is not simple when millions of packages have to move through warehouses, transportation networks, software systems, and delivery routes. Amazon has to pay for fulfillment. It has to maintain technology. It has to operate massive infrastructure. It has to deal with returns. It has to manage inventory. It has to invest in automation. And it has to keep the whole system moving quickly enough that customers don't start thinking about alternatives. That means Amazon's retail business isn't simply a story about revenue. It's a story about cost. And this is where one of Amazon's most important economic ideas appears: scale. Suppose you have one warehouse processing a small number of orders. The warehouse still needs buildings, equipment, software, electricity, employees, and management. Now, imagine that same infrastructure supporting an enormous volume of transactions. The costs don't disappear, but the infrastructure can be utilized across vastly more economic activity. That is the advantage Amazon has spent decades building. And it explains why the company has been willing to invest so aggressively in warehouses, logistics, technology, and computing infrastructure. But Amazon didn't stop at physical commerce. It built something much stranger, a company that sells computing power to other companies. Amazon Web Services, AWS, is where the story changes completely. Your local Amazon order might involve a box. AWS doesn't. AWS sells computing, storage, databases, and other cloud services to businesses, governments, universities, and developers around the world. In 2025, AWS generated $128.7 billion in revenue. But here's the number that makes AWS particularly important. AWS generated $45.6 billion in operating income in 2025. Compare that with Amazon's North American segment, which generated $29.6 billion in operating income, and the economics become much clearer. This is why simply looking at Amazon's sales can be misleading. $1 of revenue isn't automatically equal to $1 of profit. Different businesses have different cost structures. Retail requires enormous spending on products, fulfillment, transportation, and operations. AWS has a different economic model, and that difference has become one of the most important pieces of Amazon's financial story. In the first quarter of 2026, AWS generated another $37.6 billion in sales and $14.2 billion in operating income, according to Amazon's reported results. And AWS revenue was up 28% year over year in that quarter. So now the Amazon machine looks very different. The customer sees a shopping website, a seller sees a marketplace, an advertiser sees an audience, a Prime member sees a subscription, a developer sees cloud infrastructure. Amazon sees all of them as businesses that can reinforce one another. And that leads to one of the most important misconceptions about the company. People often say Amazon makes money by taking a small cut. That's only partly true. Amazon's businesses have very different economics. Third-party seller services are one thing. Advertising is another. Prime is another. AWS is completely different. Retail is different again. Amazon itself separates these categories in its financial reporting because they represent different types of business activity. So, the real strategy isn't simply taking a small percentage from everything. The strategy is building multiple revenue engines around the same customer and business ecosystem. And there is another engine hiding in plain sight. Data. Every search, product view, purchase, review, and interaction helps Amazon understand how people use its marketplace. That doesn't mean Amazon knows exactly what every person will buy tomorrow. It means the platform generates enormous amounts of information about shopping behavior. That information can help improve search, recommendations, advertising, inventory planning, and the customer experience. And better recommendations can create more purchases. More purchases create more activity. More activity creates more opportunities for sellers and advertisers. And suddenly the flywheel is spinning again. But this creates a new question. What happens if the way people shop changes? For years, the internet search box was one of the main gateways to information. Now artificial intelligence is creating a new kind of interface. Instead of searching through hundreds of products yourself, you might eventually tell an AI what you want and let it compare the options. You might say, I need a laptop for video editing, under $1,500 with good battery life. And instead of browsing Amazon search results, an AI system could potentially decide which products deserve your attention. That creates a major strategic question for Amazon. Who controls the customer? The company that owns the warehouse, the company that owns the marketplace, or the company that controls the interface through which the customer makes the decision? Amazon itself lists AI-powered virtual assistants and other AI-related technologies among the competitive forces that could affect its businesses. So AI isn't just another technology trend for Amazon. It could influence the path customers take to reach Amazon in the first place. And that matters because the customer relationship is one of Amazon's most valuable assets. If Amazon controls the shopping journey, it can connect the customer to sellers, it can show advertising, it can recommend products, it can offer Prime, it can provide fulfillment, and potentially it can use its technology infrastructure to power entirely different businesses. That is the deeper economic advantage. Amazon has spent decades building infrastructure that other companies can plug into. And the more businesses plug in, the more useful that infrastructure becomes. But there is a cost. Amazon has to keep investing. In 2025, Amazon reported $79.98 billion in operating income and $77.67 billion in net income. Those numbers are enormous, but they exist alongside enormous capital requirements and operating expenses. The machine is powerful because it is large, and its size is also one of its biggest challenges. If customer expectations rise, Amazon has to invest more. If wages rise, costs can increase. If transportation becomes more expensive, margins can come under pressure. If competition intensifies, Amazon may have to spend more to maintain its advantage. And if AI changes how customers discover products, Amazon may need to adapt again. This is why Amazon's story isn't simply, company builds website and becomes rich. It's a much more complicated economic experiment. Amazon repeatedly spends money to build infrastructure that can make the next transaction easier. Then it uses that infrastructure to attract customers. Then it attracts businesses. Then those businesses pay for access to the customers. Then Amazon adds more services around those businesses. And the whole system becomes larger. The biggest insight isn't that Amazon has many businesses. It's that those businesses can support each other. A Prime customer is more valuable when that customer shops frequently. A seller is more valuable when Amazon can sell that seller advertising and fulfillment services. A marketplace is more valuable when it has more customers. AWS becomes more powerful when more companies build their businesses on it. And Amazon's infrastructure becomes more economically useful as more activity flows through it. That's the flywheel. But there is one final piece. Why does Amazon want all of this? Because the strongest position in business isn't always owning the product. Sometimes it's owning the infrastructure around the product. Amazon doesn't need to manufacture every pair of shoes. It needs to be the place where customers find them. It doesn't need to create every seller's advertisement. It needs to own the marketplace where sellers want to advertise. It doesn't need to build every company's software. It can provide the infrastructure those companies use to run it. And that is how the phrase, Amazon makes money while you sleep, should really be understood. Not as some magical passive income trick. Not because Amazon automatically earns money from every person who goes to bed. But because Amazon has built businesses that continue operating across customers, sellers, advertisers, developers, subscriptions, warehouses, and cloud infrastructure around the clock. In 2025, that system produced $716.9 billion in revenue. And in the first quarter of 2026 alone, Amazon generated $181.5 billion in sales, with AWS contributing $37.6 billion. The surprising lesson is not that Amazon sells a lot of products. We already knew that. The surprising lesson is that the products are only one layer of the business. The deeper business is the infrastructure. Amazon built a place where customers come to buy, sellers come to sell, advertisers come to compete for attention, subscribers come for convenience, and companies come to rent computing power. And when one company can sit in the middle of all those transactions, it doesn't need every customer to spend a fortune. It needs the system to keep moving. That is why Amazon can keep making money when you close your phone, turn off your computer, and go to sleep. The customer may stop shopping. The business doesn't stop.